Thanks for joining today's webinar. My name is Gil Arush. I'm the founder of Metadata. Today we're going to talk about how to put together best practices using big data, data analysis, and machine learning into your B2B marketing and demand generation. My personal background is I'm a software engineer, but I have about 10 years of experience running marketing organizations for B2B tech. And so I've kind of paired together those two things together, and my experience helped me start Metadata, which is a company to bridge the gap between the technical aspects of marketing and demand generation in B2B, essentially trying to automate everything that is today very modern technical marketing with the concept of account-based marketing for B2B. So first, let's try to understand what is account-based marketing. I'm sure you guys have heard this term before. It's a very kind of famous term right now, kind of entering the realm of buzzwords and fads. But account-based marketing has actually been here for a long time, especially for B2B. And really, the paradigm of account-based marketing isn't that complicated. I'll give you kind of my take on it. And so account-based marketing is really understanding your funnel. Usually, the funnel looks like, you have your total addressable market, then you have the prospects that you may go after, then you have those leads, prospects that actually raised their hand and opted in, then you have the marketing qualified leads, those who have attended your webinars and downloaded your white papers and ebooks, etc. Then you have the sales qualified leads, those marketing qualified leads that have been qualified by your SDRs. And then further down the funnel, you can actually see the opportunities and the bookings. The size of the opportunities within particular companies and accounts that your salespeople have started, and then the bookings, those opportunities that are closed won. And so account-based marketing is really the idea of flipping the funnel and saying, instead of going after everyone and slowly filtering down to the relevant people, the relevant companies, qualifying them further, and then hopefully getting into a commercial engagement, in this particular situation, we're actually offering the idea of, let's take a look at the very bottom of the funnel. Let's take a look at those companies and people that belong to a closed-won opportunity, those actual pipeline generated. And once you take a look at those companies and people, you want to learn everything about the attribution and the characteristics of those companies and people. You want to learn everything there is to learn about the kinds of companies that you have sold to successfully in the past and the kind of people that were engaged in those sales engagements. And so the first step in account-based marketing is defining that profile, defining what is called an ICP, your ideal customer profile. What are the types of companies we sell to? Oh, maybe they're using those type of technologies in the back end. Maybe they're using these technologies in the front end. Maybe they belong to a particular set of industries. Maybe the range of their company size in terms of employees or revenue is particular. Maybe they come from particular locations. Maybe they're looking for particular keywords when they search on Google or when they browse IDC, Gartner, or Forrester. Same thing goes for the personas. You're trying to understand exactly who is your buying committee, quote unquote, or the kind of people that you've sold to successfully in the past in terms of the profile of the buyer. And usually there's more than one, especially in B2B. We always call it a buying committee because you have to really kind of market to multiple personas in order to get the deal done. Because one person might be a stakeholder, one person might be a gatekeeper, or one person might be holding the budget, another person might be actually using your solution. And you want to cater to all of them to make sure that they're all convinced that your solution is the best in the market when they emerge in their selection criteria. So I'll move to the next slide to explain exactly how account-based marketing is being done. If you look again into account-based marketing on Google, you'll find many different companies claiming account-based marketing. And they're all right and none of them is right, because account-based marketing is a concept and it's not a particular tool. And again, the concept is to narrow down your marketing to a particular set of companies and particular set of personas within those companies. So basically, you can focus a lot more. You are not wasting your budget on the wrong people. And further, more important, you're not wasting the time of your sales counterpart. Your sales counterpart is spending time going through your leads, sifting through your accounts. You can help them by providing them only accounts that convert into commercial business. And so if you were looking to implement an account-based marketing strategy today, there are many solutions in the market. the first kind of solution is the one that helps you generate the ICP that we just talked about, those buyer insights. So they help you define your customer profile, they help you define your buyer persona, and they help you rank your leads and opportunities based on those profiles. So you have, let's say, 100,000, let's say you're using Marketo, and you have 100,000 contacts in your Marketo, or you have, let's say, 3,000 opportunities in your Salesforce, then the buyer insight can help you identify and rank which ones are better fit to that ICP that you have established before and which ones aren't, so that you know where to focus. The second kind of vendor that is out there is the data source. Those kind of companies help you generate those lists of companies and lists of people. And you can generate data based on all kinds of categories. The first one is demographics. That's the most common one. So this is where you say, okay, I'm looking to get companies in these industries, and between those sizes of companies, and these number of employees, and these revenue ranges, and particularly from these locations. So that's demographic data. And then you can go one further down and say, I'm actually looking for companies in the U.S. from these industries who are currently using this particular set of technologies, because maybe those technologies are complementary to yours, or maybe those technologies are competing with yours. For example, one of our clients competes with an open source database, NoSQL database. And so for them, they had a white paper that talks specifically about how their solution, their product in production is superior to that open source solution. And we've helped them identify a list of companies who match their ideal customer profile, who are currently using that competing solution, and we help them advertise the white paper that shows the comparison between the two. And so those kind of lists and those kind of that kind of data can really help shape your marketing. It makes your marketing so much more relevant. And then finally, the buyer intent data is another kind of data source that is available out there. And that data is kind of timely, and it tries to tell you what people and what companies are currently interested in what subjects. So, by doing advertising, you basically cover the opt-in relevance question, meaning not only is it the right company, not only is it the right person, but is it the right time to engage with that particular person. When you run an ad, if they click and if they put their email, it's likely it's the right person or it's the right time because they made some kind of an engagement on their end. But buyer intent gives you much more granularity and insight in that, because they can tell you, listen, this company, let's say, Splunk, if Splunk is one of your target accounts, Splunk in the last month and a half has looked into load balancers 7 times. And so if you're selling a load balancer solution, it might be interesting for you to know that Splunk is currently assessing solutions in that market. And so combining demographics, psychographic, technology, buyer intent, those kind of categories of data together will help you create a very precise list of companies and people within those companies to go after. And that kind of solves half of the equation. The third kind of companies and kind of vendors that are available outside in this market, in the account-based marketing category, are the lead gen solutions. And the lead gen solutions are those tools that help you not identify, not gain insight, but rather engage with those companies and people that you're trying to target. So those include things like LinkedIn ads, Twitter ads, Facebook ads, Google, companies like Demandbase, companies like Terminus. Those are kind of solutions that help you go after those particular set of accounts and particular set of people within those accounts. And so account-based marketing in general, just to summarize, is the paradigm of changing your targeting from going after everyone and slowly filtering them out until you close a deal, to using that particular filter at the bottom of your funnel, understanding exactly who did you successfully sell to in the past and transition into a commercial value, use all the insight you have about those companies and insights, and then using that insight to generate a list of companies and people within those companies, a closed, discrete list, and only market to those people using email, using advertising, using postal mail, using anything that is in your in your power to penetrate those particular accounts, but only go after those accounts. So let's talk about going after those accounts. When you want to actually target a particular set of accounts, let's say that you're able to gather some insights from your sales force, you know who you want to go after, you have a particular list of 5,000 accounts you want to target. Let's say that you also have a bunch of nice resources in your website. You have a bunch of white papers, an ebook, a data sheet, maybe a few case studies, and a webinar. And you want to leverage those assets to actually go after those target accounts that you have identified as hyper-personal to buy. That's not an easy task. There are many moving pieces into running a targeting campaign. There's the audience you go after. It's not just one, right? There's a list of 5,000 companies, but you definitely don't want to put all of them in the same umbrella. You want to start segmenting that audience. As I mentioned before, maybe you have an audience of companies who is particularly using a certain technology. So you want to put that in one basket. And then maybe you have another segment that represents the people with the buying decision, the people with access to the budget. You want to put them in a different bucket. Then you would put the people who are going to use your product, who have no access to the budget. And of course, you want to put another place to maybe particular set of accounts who have been looking for your kind of solution in the last, 90 days, because they might be more timely. And so you want to always segment your data, as much as possible without, of course, reaching diminishing returns. So you want to be able to slice and dice your data set in such a way that you can personalize your campaigns and you can mix and match your particular offer to a particular set of accounts and personas. The reason I mentioned all of that is because this is just talking about the audience, segmenting that audience. But there are many other moving pieces in running an advertising campaign, and vast majority of B2B marketeers are not aware of that, and are usually kind of running a very shallow campaign, which doesn't yield very high ROI. But that can be changed, especially when you put together data and AI. And so just talk about some of the factors and the components that come into place when you run a targeting campaign. We're talking about the creative. So what image are you going to use? What message are you going to use? What channel are you going to run those ads on? Again, what particular audiences are you going to run these campaigns against? What campaign type are you going to use? Is it going to be a lead gen campaign on Facebook? Is it going to be a landing page? Is it going to be a gated form or not gated form? What kind of asset are you going to use? As I mentioned before, if you're a very particular set of people or company that you're going after, maybe there's a way for you to target them with particular assets that you know is going to work well for them, like that open source audience we were talking about before. If you know someone is using a particular technology, if you use that name of that technology in an ad and provide them with an asset that talks about that open source technology, it might be a high relevancy for that particular campaign. So there are many moving pieces, and no one knows what combination works the best. You can make some assumptions. You can assume that someone is using a particular technology. If you advertise to them a creative that talks about the technology and the landing page that talks about the technology and the PDF asset talks about the technology, you're probably going to have a very successful engagement. But it's not for sure. And you also can't know for sure which channel is going to work better on, which particular set of messages is going to be more effective, so on and so forth. And so my next slide talks about, let's start figuring out what we can control and start focusing on those. And so the first thing we can definitely control is the targeting. We've talked about this before. One of the most important steps in account-based marketing is building up your target accounts list, is understanding exactly who are those 5,000, 10,000, 20, 50,000 accounts in the world that you should go after and not step out of that list, because that's going to be distraction and that will yield to a waste in spend and a waste of time. So really how to focus on that particular set of people within those discrete list of accounts. And you can do that, as I mentioned before, based on your CRM data. You can analyze it. There are many solutions out there like Metadata that can help you understand it, enrich all the data that is in your CRM, learn everything there is to learn about those accounts and people who are involved with closed-won opportunities. And then based on that data, you're building an insight, your ideal customer profile, and then based on the ideal customer profile, you go and source a new list of companies who match that profile and a new list of people, 6, 7 people who are usually the right people to target within a sales engagement, and you end up with a very nice list of companies and people. So that the first thing you can do is control the audience And I recommend that it's the first step that you take in that step. And in this screenshot here, I'm just showing this again. This is metadata, and there are other solutions out there in the market, both on the data side as well as on the insight side, that helps you understand. In this particular example, we're showing how we matched a particular profile to a particular audience that we're going after. And then the second thing that is in our control is the process. And so, although we don't know exactly what particular subset of audience is going to work on a particular channel, on a particular asset with particular creative, so on and so forth, what we do know is by running multivariate experimentation, you have the right process to fine-tune and find that magic combination. And so what metadata does, and that's kind of our claim to fame, is a process that generates hundreds of small marketing campaigns that kind of compete with one another. We like to think of it kind of like as a horse race. There are hundreds of horses running around, and trying to compete with one another. Each and every one of them has a different combination of, components, creative and asset and message and image and channel and type of campaign and audience to go after and budget and assets, so on and so forth. So we use all those different combinations to generate those experiments, and we let them compete with the goal of understanding the best combination, and also identifying bottlenecks in our process. So, for example, by running 20 different experiments with the same landing page, you can quickly identify if the landing page is an issue. Because if you see lots of visits coming into the landing page, and you see the right accounts there, so the audience is right, but you notice that none of them signed up on the form, there's an issue. It might be an issue that the correlation between the landing page language and the creative is not matching. It could be that the form is too long, the form field that you're asking them to do, so on and so forth. And so the multivariate experimentation helps you, just like in finance, identify the best combination, and it helps you identify a trend. And based on that, you can further calibrate the model to optimize and further optimize indefinitely the combination that yields the highest ROI. And the highest ROI for B2B marketeer is really not so much impressions, and it's not so much clicks, and it's not even conversions. It's a opt-in conversion. It's an opt-in lead that is qualified. It's pipeline. So if you're able to generate pipeline for your marketing, that's where you're successful. Any other metric before that can lead you to it, but it's not a metric that you should optimize for. Let the advertising channel optimize for the clicks and the conversions, while you optimize for pipeline. And so that brings me to the third point. When you do look at your experimentation, so just in this screenshot, I'm just showing an example of all kinds of different experiments that you're doing. In metadata, when we run campaigns and when our clients run campaigns with our platform, they run sometimes 400, 500 experiments per month, and they really need to focus on what you call the 15-80-85, kind of like the 80-20 rule, that is slightly modified because we have actually noticed that vast majority of the experiments, about 10% of them and top 15% of them, will actually be yielding high ROI. And so if you take a look at the right hand side screenshots, this is an example of all the experiments that one of our clients is running. They're running a very high budget of campaigns. And you can see all the different campaigns that they're running, and the only thing that really moves the needle on our model, meaning the kind of feedback that determines whether an experiment is successful or not, is whether a high-quality pipeline was created. Was a lead from the right company and the right persona engaged with us in a cost that is effective? Meaning, yes, we're able to generate impressions. Yes, we're able to generate clicks. Yes, we're able to generate conversions. But we're able to generate the right conversions for the right price, and it's scalable. Because at the end of the day, what we want to do at Metadata, and what I hope that each and every one of you want to do, is get to a place where you have an ongoing, predictable marketing machine. If it works out for 1 month, then it doesn't want to work out the next month, and you're just a star for 1 month, and you're just making it happen for your salespeople for a very short period of time. the ideal goal is to get to a place where you have a very oiled marketing machine in which you know that if you drop $5,000 budget into it, or if you drop $20,000 budget into it, the output is going to be predictable, somewhat predictable. Of course, it's not going to be accurate 100% because advertising there are many moving pieces. However, you want to get to a place in which you're leveraging the advertising channel as a big component of your marketing mix to say, I have a webinar and I have a list of 5,000 accounts I'm going after, and if I push this budget on this particular platform, I'm going to get 600 registrants, and 85% of them are going to be super qualified. That's the situation that we're aiming for, and this is the kind of results that we're aiming to give our clients. And so I kind of encourage you guys to go through the steps that we've talked about before, the insight, data, and then the experimentation, to get to a place where your marketing organization has the ability to generate that machine. And you have a machinery that your salespeople can rely on. They can tell you, hey, listen, next month I have a gap in my pipeline. I really need you to generate 20 opportunities or 50 qualified meetings for me, and you have the ability to do that as long as you get approval for the budget. So let's talk about some of the tactics that marketeers and marketing managers can really use for B2B account-based marketing. There are a few things that we've identified at Metadata and kind of tactics that we take on behalf of our clients when they need to generate those pipeline goals. And so using Metadata, our clients are using these 6 different tactics, and there are more. These kind of the highlights that they use to generate qualified pipeline. The first one is the buyer intent. If you remember before, I mentioned buyer intent data. So that's the ability to get a list of, a timely list, I should say, of people within the right company who are currently talking about your solution, your competitor solution, your kind of technology, or the problems that you solve in the market. And so buyer intent is a way to essentially get a curated list of people and companies within your ideal customer profile who are currently interested in your solution. That capability is very interesting to your sales counterpart, because not only does it give them all the contact information of the kind of leads that you go after, but gives them the trigger that started the conversation. So if they're looking for a particular technology or they were talking to one of your competitors, you get that context together with the contact. And so you have a very easy conversation starter and a lot of context before you approach that particular persona. So buyer intent is one of those tactics. Air cover is another one. Air cover is really the concept of kind of supporting your salespeople with marketing. So let's say you have 5 different salespeople in your organization, and each of them has a different territory that they go after. What you can do is take a list of accounts for each and every one of those salespeople. Let's say they each cover 500 accounts, and you go and generate a list of those 2,500 accounts for those 5 people, and you start targeting them. And you target them with assets and messages that are relevant to them, like we mentioned before. But the big capability here is to actually show your salespeople a dashboard, and that's what our clients are using it for. They are sharing with their salespeople a dashboard that shows them all the accounts they're currently going after. They're emailing and they're calling and they're direct mailing and they're visiting, so on and so forth. They're showing them how those accounts are performing from a marketing point of view. Have they been hit with an ad? Have they seen the impression? Have they clicked on it? Have they visited the website? And of course, if they converted, then they're going to get that contact information enriched right into their lab. And so Air Cover really gives you the ability to stay top of mind in the account that you're already going after, to make sure that when you call them and when you email them, you don't just say, hi, my name is such and such and I'm with company such and such. You can say something like, hey, I noticed that you clicked on the ad yesterday, or I noticed that you saw our white paper. Even if they didn't actually convert into it, you can still get those kind of insights, and you can see that they visited and that they had some kind of an engagement with you. And that makes the conversation so much more relevant. Pipeline acceleration is another one of those tactics. And pipeline acceleration really speaks about the ability to accelerate some of the deals in your Salesforce, in your CRM. So like every other organization, you have many different accounts that you're trying to close. And some of them are closed lost. You lost that deal, and you're going to maybe check it again in 6 months. Some of them you won, and you already got money in. And then many of them are in limbo. And limbo is always the worst thing to have because it's not a yes and it's not a no. And so you're going to keep trying. You're going to keep trying. Maybe they're not going to respond. Maybe they already chose a different solution. Maybe you just don't know about it. But you really want to try to get that account into a closed won or closed lost. Either way. And so pipeline acceleration is the tactic of pushing not top of the funnel content, so not those white papers again and not those ebooks and webinars, because those are usually being used to educate the market, but rather you're going to use case studies, data sheets, price comparison charts, and use those assets that are a little bit more middle of the funnel and bottom of the funnel to try to get those in front of the accounts that are indecisive or have ignored you, and try to get them back into the decision board. One of our clients that was acquired since, called Driven, got acquired by Experimentation. They were one of our kind of first clients, and they had about 500 target accounts that they were going after. Large companies like American Tobacco Company and United kind of enterprises, and they had about 141 of those accounts walking up, quote unquote. We were helping them, waking those accounts up because they were sitting in their pipeline, kind of not going anywhere. And using metadata, they were able to accelerate those accounts. Not all of them got accelerated to a closed won. Some of them got accelerated to a closed lost. But at the very least, they were able to come back to Driven, come back to their marketeer and back to their salespeople, and then talk to them about the engagement. Because even if they haven't heard or they ignored the email from that company for 2 weeks, suddenly they saw their ads everywhere, and so they were kind of forced to bring them back as a top-of-mind item, and then they engage back with the client. Of course, on the other hand, that Driven was also able to generate a few $1 million worth of pipeline for that webinar. And so the ability to get those accounts who you already invested in them, you already had some kind of a conversation with them, and now you're getting back into engagement with them is very beneficial because you're kind of getting the return on your investment from your self-counterpart. So there are many kind of other insights. There's the named account marketing, in which you have a set of accounts that you want to go after with a particular message. You just upload them and you go after them with a particular message. There's persona insight, which is what we talked about before. What kind of insight can you learn about the kind of company that you sell to and the kind of personas that you engage with? There is lookalikes. So there is a lookalike feature that you probably are aware of with Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, where you can upload like 1,000 contacts and have it generate 1 million similar contacts. Metadata has that capability within, and we only use B2B signals. So unlike a Facebook kind of channel where they would use gender and age and groups they belong to, many of them are consumer signals to generate the lookalikes. What metadata will do is generate those lookalikes internally using our data source partners. And so let's say we find that there are particular back-end technology, like they're using Apache Hadoop. We can generate lookalikes using a technology like an Apache Hadoop. And so those kind of capabilities are the ones you want to consider when you run account-based marketing. Those particular tactics have been proven to be very successful. It's always good to mix and match those tactics and not just choose one, and really be experimental about the way you run your marketing. And so in terms of process, we always offer the Agile Marketing process, which is spend a little bit of time doing some tuning and putting all your systems together. You have many moving pieces, right? You have those marketing automation tools and your CRM tools, your landing pages, your Facebook and other advertising accounts, your Google Analytics, many, many different solutions. It's very important to put them all into one place and connect them all into one particular solution. And so metadata allows you to integrate all of your solution into it, and then we were able to ingest all the data and kind of run a closed loop marketing because of that. Every time a lead is generated because one of the experiments we've generated, then we can see how that lead flows into your marketing automation, what score it gets, there's an opportunity associated with it, so on and so forth. The second stage, of course, is to scale it up. Once you see something that is successful, you want to get to the place where it's predictable. You want to say, okay, if I put 10x the the budget, am I going to get 10 times the result? Is it still going to be effective? Is it still going to be precise? Is it still going to be accurate? Is the budget still going to work? And then, of course, you want to make some adjustments. Nothing works forever, and so you want to always have your finger on it and always being able to optimize and adjust it accordingly to make sure it's still an effective marketing program. Just to give you some kind of an idea of the way metadata, we have our own account-based marketing solution, and we kind of cater more to the mid-market companies, to the MuleSoft and Nutanix and PayScales of the world. And our job is to completely take over and automate the process of demand generation using targeted advertising for your particular marketing goals. And so the way metadata works, and really this is a good blueprint for how you should run if you're not, if you can't afford or you're not interested in purchasing metadata kind of platform, you can do this in-house, and this is a good blueprint of how to do this. So you can pull data from your CRM, you should enrich it using a third-party data source. You should run some profiling on it. It could be a machine learning model, but it can also be a good statistical model. It could be that you want to run a k-means clustering or a random forest on that particular data set. Then you reach ICP, so that's the ideal customer profile, usually multiple profiles of companies and multiple profiles of persona within those companies. Once you get into that insight, you want to generate lists of companies and people within those companies who match that ICP. We call it enriched lookalikes. Then you want to get all the PIIs, all the personally identifiable information of those people. You want to get their mobile device ID, IP address, cookie. You want to get their Facebook handle, Twitter handle, any key that you can use in order to match that particular person and company into an advertising campaign. And then you want to start running multivariant campaigns. So this just represents, the advertising channels just represent the experimentation where you generate many experiments. And then there's a closed loop that happens that every lead that comes through, it goes into the marketing automation, it gets a score, then it gets into the CRM, maybe an opportunity is associated with it. When based on those attributes, whether the score happened and the opportunity, so on and so forth, you can understand whether this lead was a good lead or a bad lead, and whether it was a good lead or bad lead, you can start scoring it and maybe give it some kind of a normalized score. And that normalized score determines whether this experiment was successful or not. If it was successful, I would say 1 out of 10, 1.5 out of 10 is successful. You want to shift the budgets toward that successful experiment. And if it's an unsuccessful experiment, usually 8.5 or 9 out of 10 experiments is a bad experiment, meaning it doesn't pay, it doesn't generate any impression, doesn't generate any clicks, doesn't generate any conversion, generates conversion but not the right conversion, generate the right conversion but not the right price, so on and so forth. All of those signals identify it as a bad experiment. You want to eliminate it. And so you end up with a small 10-15% of your experiments survive, and you want to pull all the budget into those experiments and then generate a whole new set of experiments based on those successful experiments, because we always want to further optimize that funnel. Let's talk about some use cases so you have a good idea of what is successful when you reach a good engagement. So, User Voice is one of the companies that we work with. They have a very interesting solution that many organizations use for product management, and life cycle. And so they, User Voice had a very actually sophisticated marketing organization already. Gaurav and Connor in that organization were fairly advanced in the way they were running marketing when we met them for the first time. However, they wanted to automate a lot of the technical aspects of their marketing, and instead of focusing on doing data enrichment and doing data analysis and doing dashboards and placing code snippets and doing A/B testing, many of the actions that you have to take as a marketing manager in order to run a sophisticated marketing program, they wanted to put more of their time into value add actions, things like building content, creating a new ebook, identifying a new set of companies, things like that are more using more of their time effectively. And so, using metadata, not only were they able to keep the same operation and save about 10 to 15 hours a week, but they were also able to get a lift in their conversion. And so our biggest metrics, again, it's something that metadata can be credited for. This is completely on user voice. Their assets were good, their content was interesting, the audience was relevant, their product is superb, and the audience was relevant, and the brand is good. But the results that we want to see from an account-based marketing is a lift in lead to opportunity conversion. For every opportunity that you bring, for every lead that you bring into the pipeline, it needs to convert at a higher pace than a lead before, because it already needs to be a very qualified lead, and it should be touched upon multiple channels, and so we should be able to see that improvement. And so that's the kind of data that user voice saw. The next kind of customer that we work with that is also very sophisticated is Refuel 4. If you haven't checked their solution, I highly recommend to. And Refuel 4 is a technology vendor, and they help advertisers automatically refresh their creative based on engagement data. So they essentially connect to your advertising channel. They can automatically detect which ads are becoming having creative fatigue, meaning the people who are seeing those ads are getting kind of bored from seeing the same creative over and over and over. And so they have the ability to automatically construct a new kind of creative that is similar to the kind of creative they know that audience needs to see in order to engage better. They have a machine learning model that knows how to identify those kind of insights, and they can create that new creative automatically. Now they use metadata to narrow down their marketing. They have two kinds of businesses they go after. They have the SMB business and enterprise business, and so they use metadata to focus on those enterprise businesses that generate a higher pipeline dollar number for them. And so they're able to reach a pretty interesting results, and that has become kind of the engine of their marketing. So the commonality for those companies and for our customers is the ability to build that machine, that demand generation machine one time, and be able to predictably go after it and generate more results. I'll stop here and see if you guys have any questions that you want to ask. We're kind of getting towards the end of the webinar, and so I wanted to open it up. I already saw that there are a bunch of questions out there. So this is the time to put any questions that you have in the Q&A chat, and I'll start tackling them in exactly 30 seconds.
Hey Gil, this is Nate. I'm just going to go through our first question here. So we got someone who sells to multiple audiences and is wondering what's the best way to segment their Salesforce data to, to analyze these audiences separately.
So if I understand correctly, the question is how do you segment your Salesforce data and your target accounts in such a way that it's going to be effective? So some of the signals that we propose to use when you segment your data is, first of all, by industry. So when you're running a marketing campaign, we definitely recommend that you run, you try to identify your top 3 industries and I assume that at that point you already have some kind of a language. Maybe you have an asset for this particular industry, but even if you don't have a particular asset for the industry and you have a generic asset, we recommend that you use messaging and positioning that is particular to that industry. And so if you're running, let's say, again, you have a load balancer solution, very particular IT-centric solution, you want to give the use case of why that load balancer is successful for the real estate industry or for the hardware industry. And you want to mention those words and those industries and those keywords in your creative and in your messages and your messaging and positioning. So the first thing is definitely, I would say, industry. And in terms of company signals, industry is good. Technology is very effective. Backend technology, especially hidden signals like a backend technology. So if they're using a particular technology that you have a good message for. Size of company is very relevant. When you're targeting a company that is 100 people size and when you're targeting a company that is 10,000 people, you want to have a different message, and so you want to segment those companies differently because the likelihood is that the persona that you're targeting is different. If in a 10,000 companies you're targeting, senior manager, and that's and that's a big title for a 10,000 organization, you may be targeting the VP in a 50 or 100 people organization because it's much flatter. So industry, technology, size of companies, you definitely want to look into some persona signals, and so I would recommend to slice and dice by seniority or type of job title. And then sometimes if you have those insights, if you know things like the groups they belong to or the skill set that they have, then I would recommend to use those signals. Now you have to be careful not to get too granular there, meaning not end up slicing and dicing your data set too much. It's just because it's going to be very timely. So if you can automate the process, all the better. That will allow you to be granular but still keep your time. If you're doing this manually and you're not using a solution like a Metadata, I recommend that you slice and dice it into like 4 or 5 groups and stop there, do some experimentation, and then go back to the design board and see which audience works better, what combination works better, so on and so forth.
Great. Got another question coming in here. So we have a very long sales cycle and have tried advertising in the past, but aren't sure what the length of time is that they should be doing for experiments. So what have you found is the best sort of ratio for figuring out how long to run your campaigns in order to fully evaluate them?
So we recommend to the bare minimum for understanding a good combination is 3 months, but that's for the entire process. As for how long would you run an experiment before you determine whether it's good or not, we would let an experiment run for at least a week or 2. Especially in advertising, it takes some time to span a campaign and to pace some of that audience. And particularly if you look at some of the social networks, it takes some time until, for example, Facebook will give you scores like relevancy score to determine whether your campaign is good, is high quality, meaning it's high quality content for the high quality audience, and the audience likes it and they find it useful. And so when you get those scores, then it's easier to pace your campaign. So we usually allow for those 14 days to really determine what's happening. Also, the other reason is once you generate some outcome from those campaigns, you really want to understand how that outcome is perceived in the company. You're bringing, let's say you brought 30 leads from this particular campaign. Are those leads good? Do they get a good score in terms of demographics? Are they getting a good score in terms of their engagement? Are they coming back to the website to engage with more content? Are they picking up the phone when your SDR is calling them? Are they answering the email? Are they qualifying? Are they one of those, so all those, do they have an opportunity open with Salesforce? Of course, that's something that is unlikely to happen so fast. And so you want to give it enough time to determine the results, especially if you have a long sales cycle. Then you want to account for that, and so give it enough time to really determine whether that set of results was positive or not. But you don't want to let it sink for too long and spend too big of a budget, because the most important thing in this process is being experimental and kind of keep trying new things.
All right, thank you. We are coming up to the top of our time here. So I'll just repeat, I think what Gil mentioned earlier, we've recorded this webinar, and we'll be sending out a copy of the recording to everyone who is registered. So keep an eye out for that in an email later this week. Otherwise, have a good day.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Ryan. Thank you, Nate. And thank you guys for attending today's webinar. I appreciate your attendance. And as I mentioned before, feel free to contact me directly if you have any questions about this webinar. My email is gil@metadata.io. Thanks again for attending, and have a wonderful week.